Good, good morning, everyone, esteemed invitees, colleagues. My name is Matteo Tarantino from the University of Geneva, and today with my colleague Alexandre Ejazi, also from University of Geneva, I will be honored to be the moderator of this very interesting event on voluntary local reviews. The event is called How Will Your City Look in 2030? Localizing the SDG and the role of SDG voluntary reviews in CIS countries. Before presenting you very quickly the agenda of the event, I would like, first of all, to give the floor to Doris Andoni, Chair of the Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Land Management of UNECE, for a few words of welcome that will allow us to understand the importance of this event. Subsequently, we will illustrate the program of the day. Doris, the floor is yours.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, participants of the workshop, dear colleagues, it is my pleasure to open this online workshop, How Will Your City Look in 2030? Localizing the SDGs and the role of SDG Voluntary Local Reviews in CIS countries, on behalf of the UNECE Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Land Management. The topic of the implementation of the SDGs, especially of the Sustainable Development Goal 11, which is about sustainable cities, as well as other urban-related SDGs, is very important because cities have become a driving force in promoting the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, as well as building resilience in cities, and not to forget, in the fight to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic and build long-term resilience. Legislation and major policies, as well as policy instruments related to the program of work of this committee, are crafted at national level, but they are implemented at local level. This makes the cooperation between the cities and national governments crucial in all stages of policy development and implementation. For example, in Albania, the government has established an agency to support the consultation between national and local authorities of every piece of legislation and policy document that impact local governance. This is why our intergovernmental committee, which brings together senior national government officials working on urban and housing issues in 56 member states of the UNECE region, also is developing cooperation with cities to obtain their feedback and to be able to support their activities on the ground. In 2020, on the first day of the committee session, UNECE convened the first UN Forum of Mayors, which provided an important input into the program of work of the committee. Today, the committee supports the localization of the SDGs through projects, including the development of smart sustainable cities profiles in the cities of Almaty in Kazakhstan, Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan, Grodno in Belarus, Podgorica in Montenegro, and Tbilisi in Georgia. UNECE also supports the preparation of local resilience action plans for the cities of Bishkek, Kharkiv in Ukraine, and in Tirana, Albania. These projects help to develop capacities of the cities to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda at local level. At the first Forum of Mayors, mayors expressed their commitment to work on localizing the SDGs and requested UNECE to provide support in facilitating the exchange of experiences and best practices, as well as peer learning. To provide such support to the cities, UNECE elaborated guidelines for the development of voluntary local reviews in the UNECE region, which were endorsed by the UNECE Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Land Management in October 2021. Now the committee is keen to support cities in implementing the guidelines through the support to the development of Voluntary Local Reviews. Under the committee's program of work, an online training module to support cities in localization of the SDGs and preparation of VLRs is also being developed. It is an important resource for the future. I'd like to use this opportunity to thank our partners, UNECE Centers of Excellence, hosted by University of Geneva in Switzerland, Trondheim Commune in Norway, and Zofna's program at Harvard University, USA, for their support with the development and implementation of the regional guidelines, development of the online training program, and organization of this workshop. I'd like to wish all of us a dynamic and fruitful dialogue, and I hope that this event will help us to accelerate achieving the SDGs at local level. Let us work together to make cities more sustainable and a better place to live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Andoni, for this great introduction. So very briefly, our objective today is to present and understand the role of voluntary local reviews in providing tools to cities to better localize sustainable development goals towards the overall objective of building more sustainable cities. Today's workshop, which is complemented by an online training program, which we will give you more details about at in the conclusions of this workshop, features three components. First of all, we will have a session where VLRs, voluntary local reviews, will be discussed and presented. It will be introduced by my colleague, Professor Ejazi, who will summarize briefly the results of the last workshop on the same topic, which regarded the Balkans region, and will be followed by Juan Valerobles, urban consultant for UNECE, who will summarize and present the nature and working of VLRs and their role within this context. This will be followed by a short question and answer round. Speaking of questions and answers, I recommend everyone, all participants, to type their questions and remarks using the chat function or the Q&A button, which is in the lower right part of your screen. This introductory session will be followed by the first roundtable, where we will get to the specificities of the CIS area. This first roundtable will be moderated again by my colleague Alexander Ejazi, and it will see Mr. Emil Petrosian, who is the Deputy Head of the Government of Investment and Industrial Policy, Department, of Investment and Industrial Policy of the City Government of Moscow, Russian Federation, followed by Vanui Beragamian, Responsible Officer for Economic Development of the City Government of Zdan, Armenia, followed by Kubanich-Bek Kudabayev, who is the Deputy Director of the Department of Economy and Investments of the city of Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan. This roundtable, which will be, like all of our three roundtables, free-form discussion, will be followed by another short round of questions and answers, then followed by the second roundtable, moderated this time by me, about the main challenges for the development of VLRs in Russia and the CIS region. So here we will focus more on how we can overcome the obstacles towards a fruitful application of voluntary local reviews, and we will be helped in this, in exploring the specificities of the CIS context by Director Elena from the Department of Urban and Regional Development of the Institute of Regional Studies and Urban Planning of the Higher School of Economics, and Ms. Aygul Jarkinbeva, Head of the Department of Regional Statistics of the National Statistics Committee of Kyrgyzstan. The last round of questions and answers will be followed by the third and final roundtable, where we will discuss how to move forward. So we get a lay of the land in the first roundtable, the challenges, we focus on the challenges in the second roundtable. And in the third one, we try to outline a way forward, and we will be helped in seeing and tracing possible ways forward by Stefano Marta, coordinator of a territorial approach to the SDG of the Center of Entrepreneurship, Small and Medium Enterprises, Regions and Cities of OECD. And then by another esteemed colleague, Martino Miraglia, who is the project coordinator of a new project on voluntary local reviews in Eastern European and Central Asian countries in transition. This will be followed by the final questions and answers, and then by some conclusions. So without further ado, I will now leave the stage to my esteemed colleague, Professor Alexandre Ejezi, to tell us a little bit about the role that we have done so far in the previous workshop on VLRs. Professor Ejezi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Matteo. It's a great pleasure to be on board this exciting endeavor for University of Geneva, but also all our colleagues through the Centers of Excellence to take stock on a very strategic time and timing, to take stock of various experiences, methodologies, practices that we have in terms of localizing SDGs. It is, as Mrs. Andoni said, it's a very important endeavor for the cities, municipalities. The Forum of Mayors will be a turning point as well further in 2022 to truly understand how different regions across UNECE region, how different subregions, how different cities are putting in practice some of the fundamental elements of SDGs and sustainability. This will only be possible to if we can have an exact or accurate mapping of the variety of practices, the wealth of practices in terms of localizing SDGs. And supported by the work that UNECE is doing and has been doing extensively, try to understand some of these, the fundamental elements behind these practices, and also through the guidelines that our colleague Juan Valdez Robles will present, try to understand that how voluntary local reviews can enable, empower some of these local practices. That is the most important turning point that I have seen in my career in terms of advancement towards the SDGs. And this wealth of practices can inform us on the way forward. We'll see, as Matteo Tarantino, my colleague, was saying earlier on, how we can address some of the challenges that UNECE region is facing through this wealth of practices. I leave the floor to Juan Valdez Robles to share with us his insight on this variety of methodologies and also present to us the voluntary local reviews as UNECE has been implemented. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Thank you, colleagues. Let me start with my presentation because it's a little bit long. First of all, you can find in the chat box some of the links for the guidelines and other relevant documents for the UNECE in Russian language and English language that you can find more details in the link. So let's start with my presentation. My presentation is structured in 3 blocks. The first part, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, provides an overview of the 2030 agenda and how they are linked to the local and regional competencies and responsibilities and the voluntary local reviews in the UNECE regions. The second part, guidelines for the development of the VLRs in the UNECE regions. I will give you an overview of the guidelines for the development of the voluntary local reviews in the UNECE regions, and I will introduce the general principles of the guidelines for the development of the VLRs. And the third part, I will explain to you the 4 phases of the VLR developed in the guidelines for the UNECE regions. So let's start. The SDGs are an ambitious set of 70 goals of 117 targets that were defined developed through an unprecedented dialogue among UN member states, local authorities, civil society, the private sector, and other stakeholders. The 2030 Agenda identifies 5 thematic areas: people, planet, prosperity, peace, partnerships, the 5 pillars of the SDGs. Stress the local dimension of the SDGs. The SDGs include targets related to the competencies and responsibilities of the local and regional governments, particularly to their role in delivering basic service and promoting integrated, inclusive, and sustainable territorial development. Localization is the process of taking into account the national context in the achievement of the 2030 Agenda, from the setting of goals and targets to determine the means of implementation and using indicators to measure and monitoring progress. Localization relates both, first, how local and regional governments can support the achievement of the SDGs at national level through the action from the bottom up. In this sense, the voluntary local reviews is a powerful tool to advance the localization of the SDGs. VLRs provide first-hand information on how local and regional governments are leading the way in the implementation and innovation of the SDGs. And second, how the SDGs can provide a framework for local development policies. The VLRs are strengthening the link between the SDGs and COVID-19 recovery. Local governments' priority is to provide a solid response to the socioeconomic challenges that COVID-19 crisis is generating. VLRs have been used as a tool to interlock the advance of localization, the SDGs, and the effort to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, providing solid evidence to all recovery plans at all levels. The achievement of the SDG depends more than ever on the ability of the local regional governments to promote, integrate, inclusive, and sustainable territorial development. As stressed in the synthesis report of the UN Secretary General, before ending the first part of my presentation, I want to share a quote from the synthesis report of the UN Secretary General with all of you. Many of the investment to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals will take place at the subnational level and be led by local authorities. Let's continue with the guidelines to develop of the VLRs in the UNECE regions. At the 82nd session of the UNECE Committee of the Urban Development, Housing and Land Management in October 2021 in Geneva, the committee endorsed the guidelines for the voluntary local reviews in the UNECE region, developed in collaboration with UNECE partners. These guidelines aim to support local and regional governments in the UNECE regions in promoting shared value creation for cities and other human settlements. The UNECE guidelines for developing the voluntary local reviews will be updated with the lesson learned during this regional workshop. The guidelines support the implementation of the Geneva Declaration of Mayors agreed at the first UN Forum of Mayors in October 2020. The mayors who attended the forum committing themselves to overcoming the crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. These VLR guidelines further build on the UNECE UN Habitat Guidelines on evidence-based policy and decision-making for sustainable housing and urban development. This aim to assist cities in implement evidence-based approach at the local level. The process includes the disaggregation of data with the aim of leaving no one behind. These voluntary local reviews guidelines build on knowledge gaining in applying the UNECE IT key performance indicators for smart sustainability cities. The Smart Sustainability City profiles were developed by UNECE using KPIs for a Smart Sustainability City during 2019 to 2021 for cities in Grodno, Belarus, Tbilisi, Georgia, Nur-Sultan, Kazakhstan, Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, Podgorica, Montenegro, and 5 cities in Norway. Let me continue with the general principles of the guidelines of the voluntary local reviews in the UNECE region. The first one, develop practical action-oriented planning documents well integrated with local or regional governments planning and financing system. This will be further support local and regional authorities in aligning their programs and budget with SDGs, recovery better from the pandemic, and promoting urban resilience. Second, include both long-term strategies and short-term plans for cities and regions to address key challenges in achieving SDGs and promoting urban resilience. Third, are well coordinated with national plans, including voluntary national reviews and concrete action projects. It is important to improve coherence between VLRs and VNRs, including by a stabilized link at the national level and by cooperation with key national players. 4, promote sustainable development at the local level through the creation of shared value. VLRs should reiterate the importance of value creation for local communities, especially the most vulnerable groups. 5, promote a participatory approach. VLRs should be open, inclusive, participatory, and transparent for everyone, and support reporting by all relevant stakeholders. 6, ensure no one is left behind. The VLRs will be people-centered, gender-sensitive, respect human rights, and have a particular focus on the poorest, most vulnerable, and those most in need of assistance. 7, remain evidence-based. The process of developing VLRs should focus on evidence-based approach, including the use of quantifiable indicators which allow progress review in achieving SDGs and building urban resilience. 8, remain flexible and adaptable in response to COVID-19 emergency recovery plans at regional and local levels. VLRs must consider COVID-19 related challenges when working towards achieving SDGs. They should also take into account action and public policy to help cities toward relations of the SDGs, as well as key elements of sustainable development such as energy, mobility, constructions, infrastructure, or food. And the last one, 9, maintain a strong focus on mobilizing financial resources for implementation of the VLR recommendation, including the use of innovative finance instruments. VLRs should align local budget with SDGs and develop progress aimed at mobilizing financing for projects and programs. Let's continue with the third part of my presentation and the last one. I'm going to explain to you the fourth phase of the VLR developing the UNECE regions. The phase 1, collection of information and data. UNECE I2, using the methodology for UNECE and I2 key performance indicators for smart sustainable cities. The second, phase 2, assessment of the data and review of the achievement of the SDG through participatory approach. Phase 3, formulating proposal for sustainable solution based on recommendation of the city performance assessment. And phase 4, local action and projects and innovative financing. The phase 1, collection of information and data. There is a need to collect evidence on urban challenges. As I mentioned in my previous slide, these guidelines aim to support the government's efforts to improve evidence-based policy making on sustainable urban development and housing. Access to reliable data in cities and human settlements is one of the most critical challenges to developing VLR reports. To support cities in their efforts to collect data and develop evidence-based policy, UNECE and I2 elaborate key performance indicators for the smart sustainability city as a public access free of charge standard in 2015. The key performance indicator was endorsed by UNECE Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Land Management in 2016, and were further amended to take into account SDGs in 2007. Phase 2. Participation and inclusion are not only relevant for the review of data, but also to create qualifiable data, raising awareness, ownership of SDGs, strengthening the social contract, and bringing minorities and vulnerable groups into the decision-making process. Phase 2, therefore, consists of a structured assessment of data collected in phase 1 on how SDGs are to use the data to formulate recommendations for sustainable development. Phase 3, opportunities for sustainable solutions. Based on the analysis and recommendation of the city performance assessment, proposals for projects and activities need to be formulated. During this stage, it's important to develop a clear institutional structure for development and implementation of the VLR recommendation. VLRs enables regional and local governments become aware of local community needs and include them in local policymaking and action plans. The stakeholder engagement is a crucial part of the VLR process to understand the challenges and opportunities of local communities and businesses. And phase 4, local actions and projects. VLRs will devise tangible solutions to address the 2030 agenda. National and local governments are significantly affected by the multidimensional impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Local governments are the local communities front line. They understand the socioeconomic damage to the city brought by the pandemic. The VLRs is a framework with a long-term vision to provide local action and specific emergency projects to be better in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Financial mechanisms are vital to this. Sub-regional and local governments need financial and human resources to achieve VLRs, local actions and projects for sustainable development. Cities and municipalities need efficient financial tools to define objectives and monitor indicators. I hope that this presentation and approach to the guidelines for the development of the voluntary local reviews in the UNECE regions help you and to be able to create a step-by-step approach to develop VLRs reports in your city. Thank you for your time. Back to you, Alexander.
Thank you very much. Juan. This comprehensive presentation and layout of the way VLRs can enable us to improve some of our intake and also put in practice some of the SDGs improvements that are needed towards SDGs implementation is extremely important to lead the way so that we can improve things, incorporate methodologies, and move forward. Towards that goal, I would like to start our first panel. I don't know, Matteo, if you want, we have time for question and answer.
There are no questions and answers in the chat and in the Q&A, so I think we can proceed and we'll pick them up as we go. Thank you.
Based on what we heard from Juan, I would like to start this first roundtable, truly taking into account and give ourselves to this exercise of stock taking to discuss the opportunities for development of VLRs that we have in front of us through some of the elements that will be presented to us across Russia and CIS best practices. I have the pleasure of moderating this panel and sharing this time with three illustrious members of this community. Mr. Emil Petrosyan, Deputy Head of the Department of Investment and Industrial Policy, City Government of Moscow from the Russian Federation. Mr. Vanui Garamian, Responsible Officer for Economic Development, City Government of Kherson, Armenia. And Mr. Kubanchebek Kudabayev, Deputy Director of Department of Economy and Investment, City Government of Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan. I would like to give you the floor, starting with you, Mr. Petrosyan, by asking these three questions, or try to see if we can find a way through your this wealth of opportunities that we see across Russia to answer to these three questions. How would VLRs, if developed for your city, contribute to the economic and social development and urban resilience building at the city level? What are the needs of cities in your region in the development of the VLRs? And finally, how could the UNECE regional guidelines be updated to support better improving quality of life in your city? I would like to give you the floor, Mr. Petrosyan, to share with us your insights and present the opportunities that you can share across your practices in Russia. Thank you. Mr. Petrosyan, the floor is yours.
Да, спасибо. Но прежде всего я хотел...
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to start with the SDGs that they probably intuitively, we started working on that back in 2016. And so the task of our investment policy was optimizing procedures, reducing the timeline for public procedures and public services. And so we had to think about the entire complex of development for all city infrastructure, not focusing on one thing, but paying closer attention to all aspects for all people in this world, environment, and so on and so forth. In 2019, we started this program with the OECD territorial approach for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. That was a pilot project that we were happy to participate in, and we did a great job on certain indicators, on achieving these indicators that could help us to see how Moscow has achieved some SDGs. I think that was the kind of work that was used by international OECD experts, which are somewhat different from the customary indicators supplied by our statistical agency. I would like to say special thanks in this connection to our experts and colleagues who helped us. I see Stefano and Marco with us here today. So thanks so much to you and your team. So 2 weeks ago, on the 1st of December, on the sidelines of Expo 2020, we heard a report by the city of Moscow on sustainable development goals achievement. Just a few words about this report. We looked into the achievement of these goals by the city of Moscow, precisely the 16 or 17 goals. And in this particular context, Moscow showed much better results compared to other cities, especially in terms of quality education, labor market, economic growth, industrialization, innovations, and infrastructure. We have achieved 100% on gender equality, on clean economy, but also there are certain goals, sustainable development goals, that our colleagues from OECD pay special attention to. So that's especially as regards SDGs related to environment, lean production, responsible industrial development. We understand that there's a lot, that's a great work has been done over the recent years. We managed to reduce air pollution by 25%. And despite the fact that it's not a bad indicator, but we still have a lot of things to do. So within the frame of this work, our Department of Investment and Industrial Policies made a proposal to develop some environmental standards for the Moscow industry, so that will help them to become more environmentally friendly. So within the frame of these standards, we're planning to make assessment of the environmental friendliness level, the amount of greenhouse gas emissions, the efficient use of electric power, the volume of waste produced by our companies, recycling, processing, taking into account the energy consumption from renewable energy sources. So these standards, I think we are going to use for our so-called brown sector enterprises, because it's in our interest to do this, taking into account the international standards. So as so that our companies could compete and could feel they're more comfortable on the foreign markets. And of course, the city will extend every support it can to, especially financial support, to the companies that will meet these standards. Now, getting back to the report that we received from OECD, let me know that it also mentions the importance of the federal and interregional policies and in interaction. Colleagues from OECD recommended that they streamline this kind of cooperation. And so we started this work already this year. So as we work jointly with our colleagues from the Federal Development Corporation, we're participating in a project on 12 single company cities. Our colleagues, and taking into account the recommendations and guidelines from our colleagues from OECD, we are leading this work in terms of the development of these single enterprise cities. So the Minister of Economic Development of the Russian Federation is now has now set up a ranking of these cities. 5 of them are now in the pilot project that is dealing quite actively with the SDGs. Now, just a few words about our plans. So based on OECD recommendations, we're planning next year to facilitate work with businesses. We are now entering the second phase of the OECD project as we continue to work with our experts, and we hope to get recommendations on the most efficient business involvement and community involvement in the SDGs.
Within the framework of this work, we have started a new section in the Moscow City portal, and we place actual information, relevant information on the project, and we invite our colleagues, business representatives and the community to participate. And I would suggest that for those who are interested in this kind of information, to visit this webpage, and I hope that in the next year we will continue to work because we understand its importance and relevance, and we have prepared certain directions to the city authorities in accordance with the recommendations of the OECD, and we are going to implement that next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Petrosian. Truly impressed by the scope of advancements that the region and city of Moscow has been is displaying here. The success story is staggering, including all the indicators that you mentioned, from pollution to gender equality, green economy advancement, and more importantly, what we learned from the experience of and the opportunity that your lay ahead in front of us is the collaboration with OECD has enabled you to streamline some of the most fundamental elements of the advancement of SDGs and localization of SDGs, which is stakeholder engagement. And to that respect, very glad to hear that the next step will be to bring in the community as well as the business, and also, as I was saying, streamline the communication and exchange of information with across different public sectors representatives. Thank you very much. This really informs us on the as I was saying earlier on, the wealth of practices and also success stories and the way forward across the experience of Russia. I want on this note give you the floor, Mrs. Barkeamian, to share with us your insight from Armenia and the government of Razan to share what some of the opportunities that you see ahead and how you can bring in these responses to the 3 questions that I mentioned earlier. Mrs. Barigamian, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. And if I may, my name is Vanui Barigamian. I deal with the economic development issues in the city of Razdan in Armenia. We are an industrial city, and we would like to maximize the opportunities, and we hope that we will be able to create a smart city out of Razdan by means of well, everything is being done in order for the population to keep living in Razdan in comfortable and excellent conditions as regards education and family development. And I would like to say that as of today already, we have built smart bus stops, for instance, with free Wi-Fi connection free of charge and GPS integrated into the system so that, you know, it's more comfortable for the local population to use the local transport. And we have carried out a number of measures as well. For instance, we have installed solar batteries on the roofs of kindergartens, and we also have diode-based lights on bus stops. And we have done a number of other things as well. We have worked out a plan for the development of eco-tourism in the city. This year, for instance, the Razdan community was extended, and as a result, 4 different settlements joined in the city of Razdan with a very high potential for the development of tourism, agri-tourism. And I would also like to respond to the question on voluntary local review. In my view, VLR has a direct connection with the development of the city. As a result of this VLR, we will be able to assess the actions undertaken in the sustainable development of the smart city. And that also will give us an opportunity to find better ways to implement the SDGs. And as regards the development, the methodology and training, and I believe that we need to establish a constant connection that would enable us to train people and to provide for investments in the future. Also, the tools of the VLR, in order to improve these tools, we will probably have to translate or have the methodologies translated into Armenian, and that would be very helpful. Thank you. That brings me to the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Barigami, and your presentation is also very informative to bring us some of the success stories that at the level of an industrial city in Armenia, we can connect also at the obviously different scale to the success story of Moscow. This is very important for us to understand that across these scales and scopes of implementation and localization of SDGs, VLRs can play an important role and in terms of, as I was saying, streamlining some of the success stories. You mentioned for Razdan some of the advancements and improvements in terms of mobility, public transportation, connecting it with the well-being and better living conditions for the population, as well as the energy dimension that truly puts Razdan on a trajectory towards that smart city goal that you have. And obviously, UNECE, as Mrs. Andoni was saying, will be very happy to support you through the training on VLRs on this. From the experience of the mega city or world city of Moscow to Razdan, which aspires to be the smart city of Armenia and the region, I want to give you the floor to you, Mr. Kudabayev, Deputy Director of the Department of Economy and Investment and City Government of Bishkek, to share with us your insight on the opportunities that comes toward us in terms of localization of SDGs from Kyrgyzstan. The floor is yours, Mr. Kudabayev.
Добрый день, уважаемые участники мероприятия.
Good morning, good afternoon, all the participants of this. Can you hear me? I hope you can hear me well. Yes, we can hear you. It is a pleasure to be greeting you all, to be seeing you all. We are talking today about the necessity and the opportunity of developing voluntary local review. I would like to say that at the forum last year, the Kyrgyz Republic presented its first national review. And at the local level, the city of Bishkek definitely realizes and appreciates its necessity to be involved into the process. Until today, at the local level, we haven't prepared any voluntary local review, but we do have this need. The mayor's office of Bishkek has worked out a program for the development of the capital city for a midterm. And it includes a number of priority measures that correlate with SDGs. In particular, the city has very acute problems in the area of education and the city communications, in the development of the urban infrastructure. And in addition, we also have some challenges as regards economic development of the city. All these issues were made part of the draft program, and this draft program is being considered at the moment. And as soon as it gets passed, in the midterm, the city of Bishkek will be developing in accordance with this program that I have just mentioned. In case this voluntary local review is to be prepared, I believe that the monitoring system should be correlated of this capital city development program should be correlated with the monitoring of SDGs, because there's definitely a strong correlation between the two. As regards the process itself, I would like to note that the phase of developing VLRs, the phases are quite complicated. Even, regarding the first phase, as far as data collection is concerned, I believe there will be some difficulties as regards collection of the necessary information, because the statistics, the local statistics, are not collected at the level the national statistics are gathered. For instance, as regards the city of Bishkek, for instance, the gross regional product statistics fall behind the national statistics by a year. So this is a good example And the Bishkek City Council actually makes certain steps to be better involved into the SDG achievement process. And as regards the VLR for Bishkek, for the city of Bishkek, it would be very important to have support from the point of view of preparing for the process itself, for the VLR process. And given that VLR development consists of a number of phases, it would be great for the city of Bishkek to be supported in the preparation of every phase from the methodological point of view and from the point of view of capacity building of the people who will be involved into this process. So this support will be very important. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention. If there are any questions, I stand ready to answer them.
Mr. Kudabayev, thank you very much for sharing the experience of Bishkek. Again, we are taking stock of some of the success stories, some challenges, but more importantly, the importance of VLRs and how VLRs can empower some of the best practices that you're putting at play here in the city of Bishkek, and the monitoring of the advancement of the capital city towards its development is going to be a crucial turning point. You also mentioned the importance of the statistical ecosystem and all the data ecosystem and how it is important to connect the dots and to be able to monitor at a better level or more efficient level by streamlining the data and the information that we get from different sources. The expert here is my colleague, Matteo Tarantino, to whom I give the floor by thanking all three panelists from Moscow, from Armenia, and also from Kyrgyzstan to share with us these opportunities ahead. Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Matteo.
Thank you, Alex. Before we proceed, there is a question in the chat for Mr. Petrosian, and it asks what follows. You mentioned the work to localize the SDGs in collaboration with OECD. Could you please elaborate if you have any information on the voluntary local review for the city of Moscow prepared this year by UN Habitat? Mr. Petrosian, would you like to elaborate on that?
Да, извиняюсь. По отчету, который делал...
I'm sorry. As regards the UN Habitat report, is still under development. It hasn't been published yet. And Moscow is preparing its local review, but it hasn't been published yet. I believe that it will probably be presented and most likely be presented at the Urban Forum next summer, which is a regular event held by Moscow every summer in June.
Thank you very much. I hope that satisfied the curiosity about this specific item. So thank you all our panelists for this very interesting roundtable. And this roundtable gave us a wealth of experiences regarding VLRs and connected experiences in the CIS region. And now we would like to move on to the challenges. So in this second roundtable, as mentioned, we will discuss 3 points. Number 1, what are the key challenges of assessing SDG progress at the local level in each context? Number 2, what are the experiences with data sharing among institutions and scales? So between the local and the central level, for example, or between the government and the regions and so on and so forth. And finally, how can voluntary national reviews and voluntary local reviews try to reinforce each other? So we presented these three questions to our panelists, but beside the questions, we are really interested in learning, in knowing about these challenges and whether the two contexts we are going to be discussing have made some advancement in this, and how VLRs and all of this community that is here today can help. So without further ado, I want to give the floor to Ms. Irina Ilina, Director of the Department of Urban and Regional Development of the Institute of Regional Studies and Urban Planning of the Higher School of Economics. Director Ilina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. It is my great pleasure to see you all, and it is great to be able to discuss the issues at such a high level as regards the progress of achieving SDGs in CIS countries. As you probably are aware, in 2020, Russia presented its first national review on implementing SDGs, as well as the citizens review. It actually supports the social monitoring of social development for the period from 2015 through 2020. It is a very interesting review, and the preparation work actually gave us an understanding that it should be institutionally organized, and this chaotic movement that we have had to date is unproductive. If we are talking about the Russian Federation, we are actually following the international doctrine of international development starting from the early 90s. However, until recently, it was more of a declaration rather than action. The policy has changed in this area, and it has been promoted to the presidential level, but it has not yet been delegated to the level of every city of the Russian Federation.
So Russia has done quite a lot in this area. The Council for Sustainable Development under the Ministry of Economic Development has been set up. A special presidential representative has been appointed for work with international organization. Also, the Paris Climate Agreement has been signed since 2019, and also the agreement on GHG reduction emissions. So precisely this document will be a kind of a framework document for all environmental systems, so as to ensure sustainable socioeconomic development of the country. Essentially, to also the presidential decree signed in 2020, which is called on national goals of development of the Russian Federation up to 2030, can also serve as the as a document, because the national goals, national projects and programs of the Russian Federation, in fact, are aimed at the achievement of SDGs. So it's highly important right now to formally point these inconsistencies, but this has to be done proceeding from the long-term planning tools. As an interesting program, the strategy of spatial development of the Russian Federation that is supposed to identify the priorities in the sustainable development for each region of the Russian Federation. But as I've mentioned already, these problems are so far resolved on the high level, on the nationwide level. So talking about the cities of the Russian Federation, we have 1,117 such cities. Only few of them have quite clear-cut principles underlying the SDGs. We can say that the concept of sustainable development, which has become a mainstream in the West, so far has not sufficient support in Russia and is not taken into account sufficiently on the municipal level. What exactly has to be done so as to make this consistent with the strategic development goals, the standards? First of all, we need information on the criteria that has to be taken into account when we are talking about SDGs. So among these factors is the geographic distribution and the impact of certain events on social integration and how they impact the achievement of SDGs. In the meantime, I would like to say that from my experience, I can say that many officials that are in charge of our municipalities hardly aware of sustainable development goals and hardly understand how they can work with this agenda. So the state officials which are responsible for this agenda, they have to implement this and to ensure the support of the civil society. So another important issue, how the nationwide projects in the Russian Federation actually encompass all these SDGs. So an interesting issue that these documents are not interrelated. And another problem is that in the Russian documents, the priorities is given to the economic growth, while the environmental, social problems are in the background. And this priority leads to a global problem that prevents us from achieving the SDGs. Another important goal is the strategic consistency between federal, regional, and local documents on SDGs by achievement by 2030. So we need to provide incentives so as to integrate practical activities. And in my view, it is necessary to set up a special platform that would help all the municipalities of the Russian Federation to share the expertise, increasing awareness on the best practices so as to encourage this mutual assistance. All city governments should look into the criteria of socioeconomic sustainability in addition to basic indicators of urban development. Another important guideline means that we need to raise the awareness of our citizens about SDGs, because we need to give them more incentives to incentivize the population in terms of mobility. First of all, in terms of sustainable consumption. So I think with this aim in view, we can use the Active Citizen platform, which is now actively promoted as an electronic resource in many cities of the Russian Federation, and to demonstrate the contribution of various urban projects into the achievement of SDGs, and also the salient advantages in connection with that. First of all, the urban mobility, the use of transit, and also the city should encourage the citizens to come out with their own proposals so as to improve the social support and the initiatives. Well, in fact, right now in Russia, as we mentioned already, is Russian Statistical Service is responsible for this work. So there are 90 indicators that are part of this SDGs program, and 19 more indicators will be added to there. But in fact, the Statistical Service offers more than 364 different indicators in all. So we see a kind of an imbalance between the strategic development goals and our plans for the achievement of SDGs. So let me note that there are state programs right now which include 1,794 different indicators in this state programs, which are in fact a tool for the achievement of SDGs. So we need to redirect them towards the solution of these goals, which presents quite a problem indeed. So we also would like to say that right now, the Russian Federation, we've seen a great achievement, which is the audit that was performed by the state borders in terms of achievement of SDGs, and which makes it possible to trace down the achievement of these goals. And apart from that, this audit allows us to follow the consistency and the connection between the different goals, sustainable development goals. This is done under the guidance of the chairman of the audit chamber of the Russian Federation. Apart from that, I think another important achievement is the document that has been issued recently, which is called the key areas in Russian education for the achievement of SDGs. Though this document is scheduled to be effective until 2035, and a pilot project is now being implemented in Russia for companies regarding the degree of integration for the achievement of SDGs, which has been set up on the basis of the Russian Union of Entrepreneurs and Industrialists, which covers issues such as privatization of specific features of some SDGs, and also the inclusion of SDGs in the strategy of company development. Also would like to say a few words about the youth initiatives regarding the SDGs 2021. Right now, the first presentation has been prepared on youth initiatives that initiated the dialogue between the younger generation and the civil society, urging them to unite for the sake of achievement of SDGs. So basically what I would like to say that right now in the Higher School of Economics, we are trying to set up a kind of a platform to unite all the interested parties, specialists, to organize this work in the achievement of SDGs. We have held 5 conferences on SDGs, and this year, apart from Russian participants, we had representatives from Kazakhstan and Belarus. So right now, just availing myself of this opportunity, would like to invite everyone to the 6th conference that will be held in early February 2022. Also, I think that the initiatives that would incentivize all the Russian cities to deal with SDGs can be the laws on strategic planning in the Russian Federation, which provide a hierarchy of planning of these activities between regions and municipalities. So right now, this includes basically all regions of the country, which where we can also include the overviews for SDGs. So we have done an assessment on 12 cities of the Russian Federation. It's quite interesting results that we have obtained from this assessment. I believe that we have yet to do this work jointly with our partners, and which is based on Moscow's experience, which is an example for other cities in the Russian Federation, so that we could demonstrate the progress towards the achievement of SDGs, and most importantly, to ensure a balanced solution of all socio-economic problems on these territories. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, dear colleagues.
Thank you very much, Director. Your talk beautifully and concisely touched on so many challenges that we need to face and overcome if we want to improve our ability to monitor SDG progress. Briefly, before we move forward, you beautifully focused on the problem of incentive structures at the various levels down to the level of the individual citizen. You mentioned the issue of alignment, alignment at the top level, but also alignment vertically between the institutional levels. But also you touched upon a very interesting point, which is the need to raise awareness and to more strongly incorporate sustainable development and sustainable development goals in the institutional mindsets and institutional cultures of the local and municipal levels. Among many other challenges that you raised, and we are certainly going to pick up in this discussion. So thank you very much. So to further elaborate on challenges and what can we do and how we can get new ideas about how to overcome them, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Aygul Jarkimbeva, who is the head of the Department of Regional Statistics of the National Statistics Committee of Kyrgyzstan. So Ms. Jarkimbeva, the floor is yours.
Здравствуйте. Я надеюсь, вы меня все слышите.
Good afternoon. Hopefully everyone can hear me. My name is Aygul. I'm representing the Statistical Committee. Would like to inform you that Republic of Kyrgyzstan, just as the other countries in the world, is committed to the SDGs 2030 achievement agenda. So these goals have been included in our state policies and have been reflected in the national policy of the Kyrgyz Republic and the midterm national program that has been adopted until recently, until 2026 last year. The Republic of Kyrgyzstan, just as other countries, presented its first national voluntary overview on SDGs, encompassing 16 goals, apart from the 14 goals. And this review also touched upon the pandemic and coronavirus infection and the measures that had been undertaken by the country to fight against this disease. And despite the progress in the achievement of SDGs, and the national program and strategy also includes the process in this, some certain other problems have been proposed. The lack of aggregated data on the development of urban development, rural areas, social gender inequality, insufficient potential of infrastructure, and limited financial and human resources to ensure simultaneous work on several priorities. The monitoring of these projects on SDGs, out of 232 global indicators, 36 were considered to be consistent with the national goals. And so the process of mapping and implementation of these goals were also online. We also considered additional 136 indicators in addition to the structure of national indicators, helping us to deal with all the tasks and top objectives. And today, we have also this program that includes all information on the work that has been performed in this area. Also, based on the date of National Statistical Committee, we have proceeded to start work on this. Apart from that, last year, the government approved certain indicators on monitoring and assessment of socioeconomic development of the region, which are updated on a quarterly basis, and monitoring is also performed over these indicators. So the local authorities are also working actively in this area. As for the expertise in sharing data and data exchange, I would like to draw your attention to goal number 11, ensuring safety and security in terms of urban resilience. Out of 18 indicators, only only 39% of indicators have been published, while the rest of these indicators have not been developed so far. So a recent experience of joint work with the mayor's office of Bishkek, where the project on residential areas have been launched. We have set up the so-called city profile and questionnaire that have been developed on the basis of SDG methodology, more than 33 indicators, and it turned out that on the basis of this work, we managed to fill out 39% of these indicators. So which means that part of the remaining indicators we have filled out for certain agencies, which are, but they are not official statistical data, since the methodology of information collection is different from the standard approved technology. And in connection with that, we have to start working on adapting SDG 11 within the framework of the nationwide program, so as to ensure the achievement of SDG 11. Also, our work is based on actual data as we shape policies in the area of urban development on local levels, and currently the city population of the Republic accounts for more than 35%, 31 cities at different levels, including 2 Republican level cities, 12 regional, and 15 district level cities. About 60% of the urban population live in 2 cities, in Bishkek and Osh. So these are just basically 2 cities, so which means that they're mostly situated in highland valleys, and in city is therefore urbanization becomes a new challenge for the urban infrastructure, which also is related to energy and still consuming sectors of our industry. Therefore, we need to strengthen the potential of the cities and to adapt our methodology to SDG 11, which is necessary to which means that urbanization in the Republic has to be measured not only in large cities, but also in smaller cities.
So for us, the most important is SDG 11, and it is very important to involve municipalities into the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this very rich account of the experience of data and data management and statistics management in Kyrgyzstan. Again, we come back on a few running threads in terms of challenges that keep coming back. So in particular, the need to align the central and the local level. But I think one point that was raised in your very interesting talk struck my mind, and it's the necessity to integrate different kinds of data and data of different source. And some of them may not be official statistical data and may be produced outside of established standards. And I believe that we are going towards a future in which to be sustainable, the data collection for SDGs will have to integrate this kind of data more and more. So there will need to be something like a meta standard for us to be productive in incorporating this very rich amount of data, which is especially rich at the local level, which is what we need. So thank you very much to both our panelists for tracing a very rich and very meaningful map of some of the challenges that we are trying to overcome. VLRs are indeed a tool that is meant exactly precisely to bridge this gap between the central level and the local level. So we do have a small one remark in a couple of remarks in the chat. One was congratulating Director Irina on the point that she raised about the need to improve awareness at the local level. But also there is a broader question about the challenges that actually gets to the point of one of the key tensions here. And it deals with the fact, and so I pose this question to both our panelists for a very short answer, even though it's a very huge question. And it's about the fact that SDGs may be sometimes in conflict with economical projects. Director Elena indeed stressed the fact that priority is often given to economic growth. The remark also elaborates on that and says, and it should be determined as circular economy or green funding could be set to affordable projects. So before giving the floor to Professor Tolobai for another question, I see that he has his hand raised, and also Ms. Kerimalieva. So let's do it like this. First, we gather all the remarks and questions, and then I will ask our two panelists to provide very short replies to all of them. Professor Tolobai, did you raise your hand?
Я хотел бы Ирине Николаевне задать.
I would like to ask a question of Irina. Ask Irina a question, if I may.
Please go ahead.
Да, вот в Москве какое положение, в принципе, господин Петросян очень...
Mr. Petrosyan has very effectively described the Moscow context, but as regards other cities in the Russian Federation, the question is, how do these voluntary local reviews and whether there's a systematic approach to the achievement of these indicators in other cities, or they are still being discussed. If I may, I would like to respond quickly to your question. Well, you know, it's definitely a problem for Russia because we have a voluntary review at the federal level, of the national level. Unfortunately, we do not have any municipal level reviews of this sort. Only Moscow has completed it and is going to present it next year. What is very important, I believe that this area could be strengthened by means of introducing a number of documents that would be mandatory for regions and municipalities, a whole set of documents that will be related to future development of the cities, and the assessment should be made bearing in mind SDGs primarily. So they should be focused on SDGs, and the national projects actually allow for this activity to be happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Professor Tolobai, for raising what is another core question, which is how do we use the experiences of one context into another context? And this is the entire tension of localization, right? What can we take from elsewhere and bring to a specific context? So before circling back to the question about the tension between SDGs and economic growth, and how circular economy and green funding maybe can help with that, I'd like to give the floor then to Ms. Kerimalieva for another quick question or remark, because I see she has her hand raised. Ms. Nazira Karimalieva? No question? Then I would ask then our panelists to close with a couple of remarks on this interaction between SDGs and SDG monitoring and economic growth. I'll start with you, Director Irina, because you raised the point in your presentation. So if you have a quick remark about that.
Yes, thank you very much. As regards achievement of SDGs at the municipal level, it's definitely a very difficult challenge because not all the municipalities actually understand the goal, and it's very important to run an educational process with the city officials. We are running a program to that effect, and I believe that various conferences and workshops will actually help to build a better understanding. And the conference, similar to our today's conference and our today's conference itself, is very important for implementing SDGs at all the levels in our countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. Ms. Aygul, do you have a comment on that?
I would like to support this initiative in order to, as regards the SDGs, it would be important to adapt the global indicators to local levels. And at the same time, national indicators should be worked out. For that, we need better understanding. And I believe that it is very important, it is crucial to run informational programs, awareness building programs. In Bishkek, there are a number of departments who are working on their own indicators, and the data could already be used in the development of the city of, well, they have been used in the Bishkek city profile, but these data could be used on a single methodological basis, and further monitoring could show what kind of challenges we had and would help us to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And on this note, I would like to close this second roundtable and give the floor to my colleague Alexander Ejazi for the third and last roundtable on ways forward for the development of VLRs, which will build on all these challenges of integration, of support, of data gathering, of data integration that we have dealt with today, but also take stock of the richness of positive experiences that we have seen in the first roundtable. So, Alexander, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matteo. Indeed, as you said, it looks like, if hearing from our panelists and participants, that from the wealth of the experiences that we see across CIS region and Russia, that VLRs are becoming truly the cornerstone of localization of SDGs. And it's also important for us to see how through the mapping of these, some of the opportunities, but challenges, scaling up can be achieved despite this disintegrated sets of data that are at our disposal. And we have been hearing about two stakeholders that have been quite strategic and powerful and potent in terms of helping moving ahead. The OECD and also UN Habitat, our colleagues at UN Habitat. And I would like to give the floor to the two representatives. First of all, Mr. Stefano Marta, the coordinator at OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, Regions and Cities, as well as Mr. Martino Miraglia, project coordinator of a new project on voluntary local reviews at UN Habitat, to share with us your personal, but also your institutional point of view, how through your methodologies and your visions and approaches, we can answer to the following two questions that, again, streamlines the way forward. What activities your organization is implementing to support VLR, how VLRs can contribute to the economic and social development and urban resilience building at the city level. And the scale is important here, as we heard from Director Irina, the discrepancies from the national and local scale. And finally, the last question, how could the UNECE regional guidelines be updated to support better improving quality of life in cities from your point of view? I would like to give you the floor to start, Mr. Marta, to share with us your insight from OECD. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alexander, and thank you to UNECE colleagues for the invitation to participate in the workshop. I will do my best to really address these three questions in the 10 minutes. First, what we are doing at the OECD to support the VLR. We started in 2018 a program that is called the Territorial Approach to the SDGs, which has the aim to support cities and regions also to localize the SDGs, or more precisely to use the SDGs as a policy-making tool to improve the local development plans, programs towards sustainability. We have been working in the last 3 years with 10 pilot cities and regions. One is the city of Moscow, and I'm glad that Emil explained a bit the findings and the recommendation of our project. The other, just mentioning the cities that we are working with, are the city of Bonn in Germany, the city of Kopavogur in Iceland, the city of Kitakyushu in Japan, and the others are provinces or regions. A tricky element of our approach to VLR and to the localization of the SDGs are, first is that the SDGs are shared responsibilities across levels of government. So this element of multi-level governance that was addressed in the previous session as an opportunity, but also as a challenge that we have in VLRs. And here we develop an indicator framework at OECD that is highlighting that 105 out of the 169 target of the SDGs will not be achieved without the proper engagement of cities and regions. We also know that 60% of the public investment in the OECD countries comes from local and regional government. And therefore, this is a call for national government to recognize the importance of cities and regions to achieve the sustainable development goals. And the good news is that we are seeing that some countries in the OECD, like Germany, Japan, Italy, and many others, are starting recognizing the importance of this tool, the SDGs, to improve the multi-level governance of sustainability in their country. And for example, in Japan, there is this Future City program where the national government is financially and technically supporting their city in producing VLRs and in localizing the SDGs. This is just one of the examples. Germany is doing as a very similar program. The second key element of our approach is that we need granular data, and this is again in line with the discussion that we have seen so far, to measure progress of the SDGs beyond the national averages. So at OECD, for this reason, we develop an indicator framework with 135 indicators that is helping about 600 cities in the OECD countries to measure the progress towards the SDGs. And we are seeing that these granular data are very important because they help to document territorial disparities, because some countries may be on track to achieve the SDGs at the national level, but it might not be the case for their cities and for the region. So there might be strong disparities within the countries. So the granular data will help to document, to identify, and to address these disparities. For example, we know that in OECD, 80% of the region and 70% of the cities are not on track in any of the 17 goals to achieve the SDGs. So again, we need this granular data to measure progress towards the SDGs. And we also know that we were able, thanks to this indicator framework, to identify which are the main gaps in terms of SDGs achievement at subnational level. For example, for cities, we see that in the OECD countries, they are lagging behind, in particular in terms of the climate objective, in terms of biodiversity, in terms of energy objective, and in terms of gender objective. So again, these data are really very important because they help us to identify the challenges, and then we can inform the policymakers on how to address this challenge. And as an outcome of our program, and then I will go to the second question, we develop an OECD checklist for public action to localize the SDGs. It is based on 5 main categories. Most of them were already discussed in the previous session. The one is policy and strategy. So we provide some guidance on how the SDGs can guide local development plans and strategy. Multi-level governance, again, how the SDGs can help to better coordinate the cities, the regions, and the national government. Financing and budgeting, how the SDGs can be integrated in the local budgets. Data information and stakeholder engagement, that again was very much stressed in the previous session. Going towards the second question, how the VLR can contribute to the economic and social development at city level. I think the key element of the VLR is that it has the opportunity to link, to connect the SDG localization process with the institutional and with the policy making process of a city. So the idea is that the SDGs agenda should be connected with the local development plans, policy, and strategy, and this shouldn't be 2 different agendas. If this is done, the SDGs provide really a key opportunity to address local development challenges through the element of policy coherence. And in particular, we saw in some of our pilot that the SDGs can help to manage the trade-off and between social, economic, and environmental objective. There was a question on that between if, for example, before, if the SDGs can be in contradiction with some economic development project and or policy. So again, this integrated framework can help to address and manage some of these trade-offs. They can be a very powerful tool to break silos among departments. So the VLR preparation can be an opportunity to bring at the table all the different departments that are working on sustainability and establish a discussion on, again, the synergy and the trade-off between the different departments. And finally, they can also be a very powerful tool to identify the local development priorities according to these priorities. Another very important element is that, again, that if we manage to connect the VLR with the local development plans and in particular with the concrete local development challenge of a city, then we can, the SDGs can really have a value. And for example, in 2 cities, Moscow already mentioned what we have been doing with them, but 2 other cities that we have been working with in the last 3 years are the city of Bonn and the city of Kitakyushu. Both of them did a VLR, and they were quite successful in connecting the SDGs process with the local development challenges. For example, the city of Bonn has 3 main conflicting objectives. One is to promote sustainable mobility, because most of the pollution comes from the use of car, and this is one of the challenge. The second one is to provide affordable housing, and the third one is to maintain the green areas of the city. So these are 3 potentially conflicting objectives, and the city has been using, in the framework of our program, the SDGs as a tool to try to manage and this trade-off, because again, the integrated framework of the SDGs can allow to do so. And the city of Kitakyushu in Japan It was the first city, together with New York, to do a voluntary local review. Is also doing something similar. It has a strong focus on the environmental SDGs, on circular economy, on green growth, and it's using this trend to address some of the social challenges that are confronting the city, in particular the fact that the youth are leaving the city to move to Tokyo. There is an aging population, so the environmental sector can offer opportunity also to address some of the social cohesion challenge of the city. So these are just some examples on how VLR can help cities to move towards sustainable development. And very briefly on the last question, how the UNECE guidelines can be updated. I see three elements here that can be that can help to further develop the guidelines. One is the need to provide a common set of indicators, because UNECE is using the Smart and Sustainable Cities KPIs. Other organizations are using different set of indicators. At the city, we have our indicator framework. UN Habitat has its own indicator framework to measure progress on SDG 11 in particular. So I think there is really a need also to better support cities and regions to have a common set of basic indicators that can be used by cities and regions. The second element is I saw in the presentation of the guidelines that the COVID element was there, but perhaps we can elaborate a bit more on how the SDGs can be a tool for national government, but in particular for cities and for regions to recover from the pandemic, and in particular to design long-term strategy to recover from the pandemic. So this is something that perhaps can be added. And the third element is maybe to collect some good practice that can help to provide evidence on how the key element of the guidelines can be implemented concretely, because there are many cities and regions from all over the world that are implementing VLR, and I think perhaps a collection of good practice can also provide some example on how to do it concretely. And I will stop here. Thank you, Alexander.
Thank you very much, Stefano, for this very comprehensive presentation and sharing of the experience out of OECD's approach to localization of SDGs. You very rightly so put the emphasis on some of the gaps that we see across these different practices in terms of improvements and implementing some of these SDGs. You mentioned across these pilot cities that you have listed up the climate improvement, climate obligations, the gender, the biodiversity, and all across this different variety of sectors. We see that still data matters tremendously more than ever. We also need to deal with the variety of experiences across all different scales at the national and regional and sub-regional level, and the multiplicity of KPIs that to some degree can become a challenge for some of the cities that want to move ahead with their agenda. You also mentioned very briefly some of these new emerging challenges such as COVID, and how the VLRs can enable or empower some of these cities to address those challenges, and the importance of exchange of best practices across peers, a network of peer cities that really can build a portfolio of the best practices ahead. I want really here to give the floor to you, Mr. Martino Miraglia, to share with us from the UN Habitat perspective, what is the importance in terms of the using of the voluntary local reviews and create this to develop the evidence for the greener, resilient, and sustainable urban recovery across Eastern Europe and Central Asian countries. And that I think it could inform us also that how we can transit towards sustainability by building resilience to the shocks that are upcoming. And COVID really showed us that we need to be better prepared. Mr. Miraglia, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Alexandre, and thank you, UNECE, for inviting UNHabitat to this very important session, event. Lots of insightful interventions, and thanks also to Stefano for the great work that the USCD is doing. Let me start 1 second by reflecting on the title of this very workshop. No? How will your city look in 2030? That's a very big question, and that's a very important one. And because at the end of the day, when we are talking about SDG implementation, about local implementation of the SDGs, we always need to adopt this medium long-term perspective, and the 2030 horizon is what we need to keep in mind when it comes to development. Of course, if we have to do it in the global context right now, we need to do an effort also creativity, because our context is very uncertain. We might want to try and push forward for recovery and development, but the reality is that the pandemic is still here, and we will have to do an effort of adapting to what is going to happen in the next months and years. But the pandemic, adopting still this 2030, I would say, long-term perspective, showed us two things which are very important and that are linked with VLRs and SDG localization. The first one is that governance is central. And when we talk about governance, it means about how our societies are managed, and how the places that our societies interact within are planned and defined. Hence, local and urban governance remain very central. But local cannot be alone. We cannot act alone at local level. Hence, governance becomes also very important when we look at it from a multi-level perspective. No? Throughout the pandemic, we have seen that the interaction and the coordination and the coherence across levels of governance for policies, delivery of services, sharing of resources was key. Hence, if we want to really recover from the pandemic, let's build on these lessons learned. The pandemic also showed us, and not only through the pandemic, but this was coming very strongly also before the outbreak, that localization has never been so central. And this is reflected at the highest level of the UN and member states. I'm thinking about the Decade of Action, where the Secretary General is including local action as one of the key levels of intervention to deliver on the SDGs. And of course, the report on our common agenda of the Secretary General that really looks and underlines the role of local governments and voluntary local reviews as strong, I would say, and very interesting activities and actors to advance on the SDGs. As we have all seen, and you have said yourself, Alexandre, VLRs are becoming the real push towards SDG localization. But as Stefano was saying, VLRs per se are not enough. If we want really to accelerate SDG localization and implementation of the SDGs, we cannot stop at the report level. Voluntary local reviews needs to be based on a comprehensive process, and I'm very happy then we will mention the guidelines on UNECE that look into this process. So a comprehensive process that includes participation of communities, that is linked to the planning at local level, that also mentioned policy coherence at the national one. So voluntary local reviews needs to be embedded in this coherent and comprehensive process that really can provide a push for the localization of the SDGs. And this is, for me, the key, and something that I repeat over and over and over, because sometimes we get stuck at the level of city wants to do a report, and then the report stays in the drawer, while we need to put it into the context of what cities and also national governments have been doing. And it was great to hear from colleagues previously all the amazing activities that are already happening here. Well, this to say that with this in mind, in partnership with UNECE and UNDESA, we have developed and this project that really looks at harnessing the potential of voluntary local reviews for advancing the recovery from the pandemic and sustainable development, with this adopted this medium long-term perspective. The idea that we would like to push forward is to support cities in 5 pilot countries to develop voluntary local reviews. reviews through the piloting, building on what cities have already been doing, on what UNECE has already been doing with regards to data, for example, collection, and helping them in rolling out the global urban monitoring framework, which is going to be approved by the Statistical Commission next year. And that I'm very happy that Stefano mentioned the issue of coherence across indicators and data. The global urban monitoring frameworks wants to go in that direction. So it's going to be 2022, very important to see how appropriate this global monitoring framework can be in solving that gap and in supporting cities in doing so. Based on this data and on this data effort, cities will be supported in developing voluntary local reviews that will then further be linked to what we mentioned at local recovery plans. Of course, we don't want to push and overburden cities with additional plans. So we really look at integrating recovery within existing development plans at local level. These whole activities are embedded and are guided by the regional guidelines of UNECE, as the regional perspective is key. Together with UNDESA, we will also develop in the context of the project a tool to link and to foster and mainstreaming the recovery from the pandemic within the VLR process, so to even strengthen the effort already made by the guidelines. And the idea is to adopt a multi-level, I would say, perspective where we connect everything that is happening at city level with, of course, the national processes, but also the regional and global ones. So the idea is to really connect the activities, the results, and all the expertise that is generated at local level with the regional processes such as the Mayors Forum, the Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, the HLPF, and the World Urban Forum that is happening next year. So let's bring everything together in order to make coherence and to share experiences across the globe. To conclude, I think that one of the aim and what we really want to boost here and to achieve is that, and we have talked about it also today, we consider the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs the best framework available to guide our recovery. But this link is difficult to make because cities I'd say cities and communities are focused still on the immediate needs of let's say recovering from the short impact of the pandemic, and planning for long term is quite difficult. So we really want to strengthen this connection through the use of VLR and the data and the analysis, and promoting something that is coherent and for a long-term planning and centered on SDGs for sustainable development. So that is what we aim to do. We are going to do it hand in hand with UNECE and DESA, but of course in coherence with everything that also other partners or OECD have been doing, because of course many activities are already happening. So the issue of coherence and coordination for the effectiveness of development is very important to us. Over to you, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Martino, for once again a very comprehensive kind of sharing of your insight that truly establish the opportunities, but also the weakest links in terms of localization of SDGs. Again, reiterate what we heard from Stefano on the importance of coherence between and among the indicators, great set of indicators that we have in front of us. And enable cities across a wide variety of skills and practices and capacity to move ahead with their local recovery plans. I also hear from you, Martino, the importance of bringing together these very powerful communities that we share through these different meetings and timeline that we have within the upcoming months. You mentioned the Mayor Forum, the HLPF, Urban Forum in Moscow. Try to really establish a community of like-minded and peers across cities to share practices and to learn from each other. And towards that goal, I think that the importance of having a platform that we can bring together or multiple platforms where we bring together all these successes, but also challenges is extremely important. Matteo, I don't know, I don't see any questions here. Is there any question that you see on the chat room? If there is no...
there were some remarks, but they were all addressed also in the Q&A.
Okay.
We do have a raised hand from our participants, but we cannot open the mic to attendees. So I would kindly ask participants with the raised hand to type in the question into the chat, and then we will pick it up.
I think, Mr. Kudabayev, you have a question. Please go ahead.
Да, спасибо. У меня есть вопрос.
Yes, thanks. I have a question. I just wanted to make sure Mr. Miraya mentioned the project has been launched, that he was in charge of this project. According to my information, this project is going to be launched in February 2022. And now I would like to learn what components will be included in the project, what major events are being planned within the framework of this project, and what is the timeline for this project for full transition for VLRs preparation. I mean, each of you in preparing the VLRs, as far as I understand, is supposed to have a certain time schedule. If it's going to be launched in February next year, well, it's likely that some practical tasks are going to be set towards the end of this project. We're supposed to prepare a draft of several reviews, as far as I understand. So the key components of this project and certain guidelines as regards the, the time schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Kudabayev. Martino, timeline, the way forward. You're on mute, Martino.
Thanks a lot for the question. I didn't go into the specific and details of the projects, but it's important indeed to mention. So the project was preparation. I would say the technical preparation for the official launch of the project will start in February. The project will officially be launched at the World Urban Forum in Katowice in June 2022. But of course, preparation, setting the ground, connecting the partners will start in February. Official activities will start in European summer 2022. When it comes to, I would say, the timeline, it kind of depends from content to context, but the first activity will be the rolling out of the global urban monitoring framework. That is also the data component, together with everything the UNECE data and everything that the city is already doing. So the data track is going to be the first activity for the development of the VLR. So we look, I would say, into a timeline that will take us more or less for some good 6 to 9 months for the development of the voluntary local review for the different pilot cities that are going to be part of the project. That is the reality of, let's say, the experiences that we have in supporting cities around the globe. A VLR that is taking less than 6 months, so sometimes it's very difficult to be, I would say, consistent, because there is a very important work in terms of data analysis, data collection, management. So we need to take a bit of time. So we look at more or less 6 to 9 months to have the first VLR developed, and then all the other activities that are going to follow. And of course, again, the different events, the high-level political forum in July, that is following the official launch, and then we have, for example, UCLG World Congress in October, Urban October, launched by UNABIT, that is going to look at SDG localization and voluntary local reviews, and then in 2023 we will bring this all back within the regional forums, so sustainable development, the mayors forum, and so on. So we are going to develop a global roadmap for all the cities that are part of the project and sharing with you. Over.
Thank you very much, Martino. A very busy year ahead. The timeline is and the agenda is filled with all these very important moments. Before closing, I just wanted to give the last words to you, Stefano. again, based on what we heard from you, but also from Martino, truly, I mean, what do you see on the short term, the way forward, very practically?
I think I would just echo what Martino and what you said, that there are many important international events coming forward from the high-level political forum, the World Urban Forum in Katowice. As OECD, we have the OECD Council on SDGs at the end of April, where all OECD national governments are coming to discuss the progress in OECD countries on SDGs implementation. And there we are bringing the voice of local and regional government, if you want, because we are launching a paper that we developed with the European Committee of Region on how the SDGs can help cities and regions to recover from COVID-19. So this will be our contribution, this paper that we are launching in April with to the OECD member countries, and we are very happy to continue coordinating with UNECE, with UN Habitat and all the other colleagues in advancing and coordinating also among the organization on this agenda.
Thank you very much, Stefano. This is very exciting. We really are delighted and happy to be associated with this community or within this community, moving ahead, fast forward as much as possible and trying to also take stock of these diversities that we see in terms of practices and context and scales within UNECE region, and build up this, as I was saying, this community around the localization of SDGs and improving towards the advancement and implementation of SDGs. This resumes our third roundtable, ways forward for the development of VLRs. I give you the floor, Matteo.
Thank you, Alex. So moving speedily towards the conclusions of this very interesting event. Before summarizing a little bit what were the running threads, I would like to give briefly the floor to Director Gulnara Roll for some concluding remarks on this experience. This workshop is one step in a very long process that has been going on. So Director Roll, would you like to add a few words before we move towards the conclusions?
Thank you so much, Matteo. Thank you so much to everybody who took time. We know that it's end of the year, so everybody is very, very busy. So we especially appreciate that everybody was able to attend this workshop and speak and share your experiences. I really appreciate for inputs and comments into the guidelines, because as Juan at the very beginning explained, that these initial guidelines were developed in 2021, and this workshop, as well as the previous workshop on the 8th of December, were important for us to collect your thoughts and ideas so that we could start revising them. And indeed, I really appreciate Stefano Martino to say that this should be a shared position. This should be, because for the cities, it's really difficult, and we received many times this feedback when different international organizations have very different approaches. So I think from our side, it's very important that we are really flexible, open to cooperation, and I really appreciate Stefano and Martino and also many other of our international partners to develop in the shared approaches so that would really help the cities. And looking to other side of the process of the preparation of the voluntary local reviews, indeed, I think, Stefan, I really appreciated the 3 priorities that you mentioned in terms of where we should be going in terms of revising the guidelines, but also, developing our work. The indicators, something what Martin also mentioned before, we know, we developed now around 20 smart sustainable city profiles using different type of indicators, which is key performance indicators for smart sustainable cities. And we know how difficult the collection of data is, how difficult to collect the data which are reliable. And I think this is what Aygul also mentioned from the National Statistics Committee, and I would like underline also her concern, and this will be the concern with many other cities. Big cities like Moscow, they have a capacity to collect a lot of data, but not necessarily the cities like Razdan, which is a small town in Armenia, would be actually able to collect all this data. And actually, they wouldn't have access to this data. So if we don't have the data, what we're going to do, how reliable the evidence is for the future, for formulating the activities. Otherwise, we did have this experience already that when you collect just 60% or 65% of the data, and this happens among these 20 city profiles that we developed by now in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, this is what happens when you get only 60% of the data and there is no other data available. Your outcomes remain to be much less nuanced. So your recommendations are not really targeted enough. Of course, you can complement by interviews and the qualitative data, but I think this remains to be our main concern about how to develop shared sets of indicators, sets of data to make sure that actually our analysis is based on rigorous evidence-based approach. And I think this will be much more, it requires much more ambition and much more work than we have done so far. So I think this is kind of a big challenge ahead. COVID elements in the project, I really appreciate Stefano mentioning this, and Martino as well. I agree that there should not be separate local plans on COVID-19. This must be integrated. So I think this is, the good definition that SDGs actually have to help us to overcome the pandemic consequences, negative pandemic consequences. And of course, collection of the best practices now also from CIS countries. And I appreciate in the questions and answers in the chat, the questions from Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and many other countries saying that actually there are many more examples, there are many more good practices already, but we don't necessarily know. So maybe it's a good idea in the new year to start collecting them. And this is when I also would like to assure participants that, of course, this was in a way for us one of the first workshops, but further on in cooperation also within the project that Martino leading, but also, on a wider kind of framework, also in cooperation with many other organizations, we definitely would like to continue facilitating exchange of these best practices, because I also would like maybe to underline that the final aim of our exercises is to help cities to recover. And we need to go from, we need to look at the VLRs by their eyes, not by our eyes of UN organizations and jumping from Forum of Mayors to regional forum to high-level political forum. Of course, this is very time-consuming events from our side, but we should keep the focus on helping the cities to recover and to achieve SDGs, to improve the quality of life in those cities. And the specifics, as we see, is very, very different. What is the situation in Moscow or in Razdan? It's a very different levels, and I appreciate, I think, Matteo highlighting and Alexander highlighting that there are small cities, there are medium cities, there are big cities. The situation and the practice and process will be very, very different. So again, it's very big, it will be very big work assisting. Some cities say they don't need any assistance. Some cities say they need a lot of assistance. So it's a very big work. So I think we should not underestimate actually the level of our efforts needed to do that. And finally, I also would like to maybe reiterate something what many cities already said. And I think Moscow was the first. I think it was an excellent example using the OECD practice about financing. Because in order to improve the situation, we need to use innovative financing instruments. We need to put together the national budget, local budget, and the private sectors using PPPs. For the UNECE, it will be one of the key activities in the coming year, really helping the cities. And I think Bishkek is now one of the testing grounds. We're working with CDIA to actually develop a project, investments, to improvement of the 5 informal settlements, where the first grant is 500,000, and we hope to generate up to 5 million in the city. And this kind of activities, I think this is very important. So we should, as international organizations, we really need to help cities to develop and help them to find these different financing sources to improve the quality of life and also to overcome COVID pandemics. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to everybody. Really appreciate also all the participants staying with us at the end of the year, and also to thank interpreters, of course, from our side. And back, Matteo, Alexander, to you.
Thank you very much, Gulnara. You basically traced the conclusions also from the thematic point of view. As concluding remarks, as moderators, I and Alexander would just like to raise 3 directions where we see that improvement need to be pursued and is possible and is being pursued. The first one is we see emerge the need for a shared vocabulary, which means concepts, but also indicators, which are translations of concepts and methods. And we need it to be shared across the different regions, but also in the same region across different scales. And to that, something that as a Center of Excellence of University of Geneva, we have been contributing to along with the Center of Excellence of Trondheim, and under UNECE guidance is the development of an online platform. So the way forward here is to try to share as much as possible knowledge in a steady way. So in providing something like a knowledge base that different levels of officers can all participate into. So this platform about VLR will be launched in 2020, early 2022, and you all will receive a URL to join it. It will be free for all, and it will offer courses on VLR and VLR related methods and concepts, striving towards trying to establish as much as possible a balance between the need of having a shared vocabulary and the need to localize into specific contexts, as also Gulnara was stressing. Second, what emerges is a need to improve the way we collect and manage data in somehow concrete ways, because we all participate into a lot of events where we stress the need to more integration, to better standardization of methods, to break the silos, and so on and so forth. And we need to move towards ways in which we can help each other, improving the ways that we manage data across all scales in ways that are manageable for cities. It was Stefano, I think, or Martino, that raised the point that we don't want to impose other burdens on cities which are already overburdened. So here also, what I can say is that at the University of Geneva, the Center of Excellence, we are developing research projects on this specific concern, how to help to concretely improve the ways that we manage, in particular, housing and urban data in general. And the third one is the obvious thing, that the need to coordinate across different institutional and geographic scales, because we share a common planet, a common destiny, and Agenda 2030 indeed is the best framework to advance towards a better future. And here the key is to us is to increase the number of workshops, of events, of sharing of experiences, of horizontal peer learning. And of course, COVID was a true significant hurdles on this, because we cannot see each other as we would like, as often as we would like. So we need to make the better use of the online resources, improving on what is already been going on. So events such as this one, trying to make the best possible use of this wonderful technology that we are all so dependent on. Okay, so these were the 3 key points that I think emerged from this, and we would like to thank very much all of the participants again. And the CIS area indeed is so ripe of rich experiences and the way that the different countries and different areas and different cities are striving to overcome challenges that are shared by all countries, developed and developing, but also challenges that are context specific, is really inspiring for us all to continue towards a more sustainable future. So with that, I would like to wish you all a successful year 2022, and I expect and wish to see you all again in our next workshop. So thank you so much to the organizers, to Gulnara Roll and all of UNECE for making these workshops possible, and to all our attendees and all our panelists for sharing with us their expertise and their time. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Have a nice day.